Welcome to the Injection Connection, in-depth discussions with thought leaders and professionals in the polyurethane infrastructure repair industry.
Well, welcome everybody to another podcast of the Injection Connection. I'm the grout geek, Charlie Lerman, and I have Erin Rothman with me, who I'll get to in just a moment here. I want to do kind of a little setup here. What I want to talk about today is I&I. And so I think my perception is a lot of people out there, first off, are scratching their heads and going, well, what is even I&I? So I'm going to turn it around rather than explaining what it is at first. I want to explain why you should even care about it. How many people out there feel that our tax dollars, like $188 million, and this is just for the state of Tennessee, should be spent to treat groundwater? I'm not talking about water, sewage, rain, that kind of stuff. I'm talking about just groundwater that's just sitting there in our ground, and we're spending $188 or $188 million a year on. But that's basically what's happening. From the study that was done in 2014 in Tennessee, they found that about 45% of the water that's being treated at our treatment plants there is just groundwater, just coming in there. But you don't ever hear about this talking. Even with this new infrastructure bill you hear coming out, you don't hear a ton of rehab for our sewer systems. And this is becoming it is a giant issue, and it needs to come to light here. So Erin has joined us. She is the founder and CEO of StormSensor. So Erin, thank you very much for joining us. You are muted. There we go.
For having me.
Yep. There you go. The wonders of Zoom. So
yes.
So Erin, first off, I guess let's talk about, what does StormSensor do?
So generally, we work with cities across the country to understand how and how much water moves through their storm sewer and coastal systems. So we're deployed in every region of the United States. We are in sanitary systems, combined systems, and storm systems, and now we're also looking above ground. And we're basically monitoring the volume of water that's moving through these systems, and then combining that data with climate information as well. So we can identify trends that may be tied to storm events versus those that are, like you said, related more to groundwater or other I&I issues.
Right. Okay. So ideally then what you're gaining, like real-time data that says what's going on in your system, rather than sometimes just some snapshot stuff.
Exactly. So we typically deploy for a minimum of a year, pretty dense resolution networks. Some are installed at almost every junction, just because these systems are so variable that understanding what's happening between them can give you an idea of where you can target specific mitigation actions. So
have you ever found or identified anything that just like an anomaly, something that's completely unexpected that you surprised the city with, or anything like that?
Once or twice, yes.
Right.
So one example was in Memphis. We were doing, we're working as part of a larger group to do a model validation study for their storm system, because Memphis was dealing with a lot of flooding. And most model validation studies have sensors that are deployed in a limited number of locations and for a very short period of time. So we're up to like maybe 3 months, but 1 to 3 months usually. And we were deployed for about 6 months before we got a call to say that all of our sensors were broken, because we were reading 4 feet of depth, 4 feet of water in all of the pipes, and it was flowing backwards, and all that was impossible. And this is why, whoever was running the project didn't like new technology. And we're thinking, like, for every sensor to show this, there's got to be something. I mean, we've never seen it with one sensor, but if the whole thing's acting up. So we called the city, and they had no idea what was going on. We asked them to go check it out, and they said, oh my gosh, there is 4 feet of water in these pipes, and it's flowing backwards. What could possibly be going on? So they talked to the guys at the plant on the Mississippi River, and they said, oh yeah, every time the river hits a certain stage, we open up the gates and then use the storm system for storage. But you're telling me that it goes more than a mile into the system? So what we had is a situation where no one really understood that the river was filling the storm system. and taking up at least half the capacity on a pretty regular basis. And when you have high water levels in the river, you also tend to have pretty strong rain events. So when you combine heavy rain and high water levels, all of which are going into a storm system that is designed to hold only rainwater, you have some pretty significant flooding impacts. So now what they do is before a storm comes, they close the gates, empty out the storm system, and clear that out for proper storm.
That's just classic of the right hand not knowing what the left hand's doing there.
Exactly, and it's underground, so you can't see it. It's not like someone's constantly checking until you have a way to do that. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, that's just incredible. Wow. So, so how did you get into this, and how did you end up starting StormSensor? What led you to this?
Well, I think everyone's dream is to work in a sewer. So of course we start there. But I was a vice president at a consulting company in Seattle when we brought in, this 2010, 2012, and we brought in a stormwater group. And for the first time in our company's history, we were losing money. And we couldn't figure out why. And when I talked to my stormwater team, they said that every time it rained at the office, they had to go sample their sites, but just because it was raining here doesn't mean it was raining there. So they're going out like 4 times before they can collect a sample. And I said, that's the silliest thing I've ever heard. Why don't we just have a rain gauge that texts us when it rains? And they said, why don't you go invent that? And I said, I will. I'm going to call it StormSensor. So that's how it started, as a little, sparkle in my eye. Right. But I had no hardware or software experience at the time, and I didn't know that I could even begin to put together a company like that. But as I started talking to more people in the stormwater industry and learned that there was a lot of frustration, and so much of it related to not knowing what was going on within these systems, I realized that maybe I could solve this problem with a team of brilliant people who could actually build the things that were in my head. And yeah, so that's how it started. And
that's
we were
spectacular.
First on construction and industrial compliance, because that was my background, and started talking to cities, and so many of them said they just needed to know how much water was moving through their storm system. I had no idea that our storm system, sanitary system, that wasn't metered, and we didn't know. So that just opened up a world of opportunity to me.
Right.
We want to go. Yes.
Wow, that's excellent. And it's the thing a lot with our industry, and when you deal with below grade infrastructure, is there's a lot of needs, but they're not really well defined, or anybody even focuses on them, because it's out of sight, out of mind, And I've often say, even for grouting, our biggest competitor is not another grout company, it's ignorance. People just don't understand that this kind of technology, these type of repairs or this monitoring is even out there to do.
Right.
And I think some of the part of it is how it's set up, because municipalities, they're on tight budgets. Obviously, we want them that way. We don't want to just throw money at them, but we also want them to use it right. But you get a lot of people where they start off at the low levels of municipalities, and then there's turnover. They move up, they go on to other things. And so a lot of information is lost there. So it's not necessarily that the government's just bad. It's kind of the nature of it. We all want to grow in our careers, but these things get left behind.
Absolutely. And then the people paying for it, which are the citizens and taxpayers, they want to see the benefit of what they're spending their money on. And if you can't see it, then why would you pay for something that you can't see, that you can't understand? And the only time they want you to fix it is once it stops working and it's too late, because you're dealing with flooding and backups and paying too much for treatment and everything else.
And oddly enough, going back to that study, like the $188 million, paying that is actually the easy part of it. I mean, not that that's fun for us or anything like that,
Right.
But what it comes down to is that inflow also causes damage to infrastructure when you see sinkholes and that kind of stuff. And those things, I mean, you're talking about damage to property, potentially harm or life-threatening conditions. And then also you're looking at when these systems overflow, you're putting septic, out there in the public, damaging our waterways and our health.
Yes, and our homes and our businesses and the people who live there and are literally working in sewage in their homes. That's
right.
Terrible. And it's becoming so more common.
Yep. So I was still thinking about that comment you made about everybody wanting to be in sewers. I've been in sewers in almost all 50 states. So it's just, it's not the coffee table book that everybody wants to look at there.
They don't know it yet. That's the thing. Once they see what's right. Anyone wants to see.
And we've already kind of addressed this, so maybe this is already covered here, but we've talked about that it's out of sight, out of mind. But do you think there's any other reasons or any systemic problems while it's kind of ignored? I mean, our infrastructure in general, I think, has a D or a D minus rating in the United States.
Our waste, I think, D plus.
Oh, so we're at the head of the class.
Yes, there are a couple of states that are pulling us up.
Right. So any ideas, or are you part of, are there trade organizations, something to help build this type of awareness?
Well, as far as the trade organizations, of course, there's American Water Works and American Society for Civil Engineers. But as far as why we're in this pickle, outside of the fact that it's out of sight, out of mind, like you said, it's also exceptionally expensive. And oftentimes when you're focusing on maintenance and you can't, again, see the immediate impact or the immediate value of what you're spending or what you're doing, the inclination to continue doing that and focus on ongoing maintenance tends to fall off. And as a result, we kind of are basically operating a run to failure model, whereas if we spent a relatively little amount of maintenance to keep these systems up, and then especially if we knew where maintenance is required, there's also that we don't know. We don't know where to target it. So we kind of do a general across the board, every manhole, every, outfall, everything has to be checked on a schedule instead of on a need. So anyway, not focusing on that or doing it in too broad of an unfocused manner means that we're missing some of the big issues and not addressing some of those issues, which then ultimately result in backups, overflows, and significant costs to the community.
Right. So do you ever get involved with, say, like a EPA consent decree where they've come down and said, your system's all hosed up here, we need to get this fixed, and you're going to do it in this time frame? Do they ever call you in for that type of monitoring or anything like that?
The consent decree programs we've been a part of have been on the combined sewer side. So, and a lot of that is looking at, obviously, when an overflow is happening, how significant the overflow is. We can quantify it given in tidal locations. So being able to separate different tidal source or flow sources. But then really in doing that, really understanding the total volume that needs to be addressed instead of the modeled volume and incorporating that into the long-term control plans.
Gotcha. Yeah. Because, a lot of times, at least from my perspective, a lot of municipalities, especially when they're slapped with a consent decree, just think we just need to increase the system. We need to make it bigger. We need a bigger plant or something like that.
Yes, increase the budget to pay the fines.
Yep. Right. So, and mitigation oftentimes is a great solution that helps or even gets them to where they need to be.
Exactly. So, and there are all different ways you can do it. It's not just, increase the size of the pipe and put them over there.
Yep. No, and then that's obviously with chemical grouting, we come in, that's a small portion of, how to control some things. And also with chemical grouting, you find just right there at the manhole, because, a lot of municipalities like, we don't have the budget to start this, or we don't even know where to start. There's some really simple things. I mean, when you look at a 10-gallon a minute leak in a manhole, that is roughly, depending on what part of the country you're in, between about $12,000 to $25,000 a year in treatment costs. And something like that, what's that?
That's one leak.
Right, one leak.
One source.
And something like that in the manhole, those are usually super easy to repair. We're talking, a couple $1,000s one day, one crew out there, and they can immediately, you see that $3,000 you paid to fix that manhole saves, $25,000 that year. So it's very simple stuff. And I really feel that we need some champions out there to get people to understand this and bring it up and maybe some type of push with our legislators so we can get someone to understand this. This is kind of a passion thing that I've found, and it goes great with we're trying to be more environmentally friendly and sound, and we're saving money at the same time. Who's against this kind of thing? And I don't understand why we're not doing more of it.
Exactly, and providing jobs for the people to do the maintenance and or creating those repairs.
100%. Yeah. So it sounds like we're preaching to the choir there.
Yes.
All right. So we've talked about, and I threw it right in the beginning there. I guess we talked about some of the interesting jobs. Is there another job, a note, or interesting thing that comes up from your investigations or your studies?
Oh, all kinds of things, because you just can't see it. So everyone has an idea of how the systems are operating and assume that they're operating as designed. So for example, storm systems are supposed to be dry when it's not raining and wet when it is raining. And due to either illicit discharges or INI issues, what we've started doing in our dashboard summaries is providing a level of base flow and the available capacity within these systems, because they're not actually empty. They're actually quite active at almost all times. We have reverse flow in areas where that's impossible because we have a siphon, but the siphon gets clogged. We have all kinds of maintenance issues like that, where we can spot an anomaly in the data and we get notified, or our customers get notified, and they can go address it. But a lot of it has to do just with reality counteracting models and expectations.
Gotcha. All right, and so kind of to wrap this up, I greatly appreciate you jump on. These are just little short podcasts we like to do. I want to share something interesting I saw, or nasty, or however you want to look at it, in the sewer, and see if you also have something just weird or something that you spotted down there. I was in Georgia, Tifton, Georgia, to be specific, and we opened up this manhole, and first off, it all looked really brown, which is normal in there, and then all of a sudden it changed colors, and I realized there was just a wall of roaches moving. And then looking more, there was 2 of them that were albinos, which I had never seen, and those were just the weirdest looking things. So yeah, that's
no. I have given all the sewers I've been in, I also have pretty significant claustrophobia. Ooh. And also, before a pandemic hit, I don't go to gyms or anything because I think sweat, like effluvia, is gross. So here I am in sewers. I tape my Tyvek and everything because I'm so freaked out with all of the bugs down there. I can't get them on me or near me or anything. But I've climbing down to the sewers, and the old bricks from the really old systems crumble beneath your feet, which is terrifying. There's been something in, you're in waders and some of these combined systems, and there's something in the water that's like tracking you and bumping against leg. That happened. And you can't get out. Right. And then on the other hand, there are times when it's so hot and you have this kind of that hydrogen sulfide odor. And I think as I'm sweating, smelling that, people pay thousands of dollars to go to spas to have a very similar experience.
That's funny.
And we're missing a whole entire market opportunity with some of these systems.
Hydrogen sulfide spa day, right? That'll exfoliate.
So you have to look at it optimistically.
Right. Well, excellent, Erin. Thank you very much for being on this podcast with us.
It is absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Charlie.
Take care.